Let me ask you something. When was the last time you set the hook, felt that solid weight, and then realized you were in a 5-minute fight with a waterlogged tree branch? Today, we're talking about a weird curse that affects almost every fisherman. It's when you go so long without a bite, your brain starts lying to you. It starts telling you that every rock, every weed, every little bump on the bottom is a fish. But here's the crazy part. The reason you're missing actual fish might be because you're too focused on feeling these fake ones. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this happens, and you'll have a clear strategy to retrain your senses and never mistake a rock for a trophy again. So, be honest. Have you ever celebrated catching a monster only to reel in a piece of the lake bottom? Let me know in the comments. This whole problem starts from a good place. Hope. We're fishermen. We're optimists. We spend hours casting and retrieving, always believing that the very next cast is the one. Our brains are wired to seek patterns and rewards. But when there's no reward, when the fish just aren't cooperating, our brain gets desperate. It starts to lower the bar for what it considers a signal. That tiny scrape over a pebble, the slight pull of a weed. Your brain, starved for action, screams, "That's it! That's a bite!" We've all heard the old saying, "You gotta have your line in the water to catch 'em." And while it's true, it can also lead to hours of mindless, unfocused fishing. This is the state where your brain is most vulnerable to tricking you, making you waste energy on snags, and worse, making you dull to the feeling of a real subtle bite when it finally comes. Let's start with the root cause of this whole mess. It's a form of sensory deprivation. Think about sitting in a perfectly silent room. After a few minutes, you start to hear everything. The hum of the refrigerator, a floorboard creaking upstairs, your own heartbeat. It's the same thing on the water. When you go an hour with zero activity, your senses become hyper-aware. They are starved for input. So that tiny little tick as your lure bounces off a small rock suddenly feels like a gunshot. Your brain, desperate for a signal, amplifies it and misinterprets it as a bite. It's not your fault. It's a natural human response to a lack of stimulus. The first step to fixing the problem is recognizing that your brain is actively trying to create excitement where there isn't any. You have to learn to be the calm voice of reason that says, "Hold on, let's analyze that signal before we react." Before we can identify a fake bite, we need a baseline. You have to understand how your lure communicates with you in a normal situation. Think of your fishing line as a telephone wire, and the lure is making a call from the bottom of the lake. A crankbait, for example, has its own unique vibration. You can feel it wobbling. When it deflects off a rock or a log, that predictable wobble is interrupted for a split second. A jig dragging through gravel has a very distinct, rhythmic, scratchy feeling. Tick, 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 tick. This is the normal language of your lure, interacting with its environment. This is your baseline. You have to spend time, consciously paying attention, to learn this language. Without knowing what normal feels like, you'll never be able to recognize what's abnormal, which is exactly what a real fish bite is. Now let's talk about the specific language of a rock. This is the number one thing people mistake for a bite. A rock is dead. It has no life, and it feels like it. When your lure hits a rock, it's often a sharp thud, followed by nothing. Or if you're dragging your bait, it's a heavy, scraping, grinding feeling. The key is that the pressure is constant and unforgiving. Think about it. If you pull your line, a rock doesn't pull back. It just sits there. It's dead weight. A lot of anglers feel that initial thud, and their hopeful brain instantly translates it to fish. They set the hook and get snagged. A rock is a full stop. It's an obstacle. It doesn't have the subtle give and take that even the lightest biting fish has. Learning to identify this dead weight feeling is probably the single biggest step you can take. Next up is the rock's sneaky cousin, the weed. Weeds are trickier because they have a bit of give to them, which can fool you into thinking there's life on the other end. But the language of a weed is very different from a fish. Pulling your lure through a weed bed feels mushy. It's a spongy building resistance. The tension on your line slowly increases. It doesn't tick or thump. It just gets heavier and heavier until one of two things happens. Either the lure rips free with a sudden pop, or you end up pulling in a giant salad. A fish bite is a distinct event. A weed is a process of increasing drag. Picture pulling a rubber band. That's a weed. Now picture someone tapping the rubber band with a pencil. That's a fish. The feeling is completely different in its origin and its texture. Okay, so we've covered the fakes. Let's talk about the real deal, the classic undeniable bite that we all dream of. The thump. This is most common when fishing with soft plastics like a worm or a jig. You're slowly dragging it along the bottom. Tick, tick, scrape, and then suddenly, thump. It feels exactly like someone reached down and thumped your line with their finger. It's not a scrape. It's not a drag. It is a single, distinct, and percussive event. This is often a bass inhaling your lure. There is absolutely no mistaking this for a rock. A rock is something you run into. The thump is something that happens to your lure. That's the critical difference. One is passive, the other is active. When you feel that thump, your brain doesn't have to lie. That is 100% a fish. But not all bites are a clean thump. Sometimes, especially with walleye or finicky bass in cold water, you get the mush bite. This one is much tougher to distinguish from a weed, but there's a key difference. You're retrieving your lure, and all of a sudden, things just feel heavy or mushy. It feels like you might have picked up a small clump of weeds. But here's the telltale sign. If you stop reeling and just hold, you can often feel a slight movement or a slow swimming pressure. It's not dead weight like a rock, and it's not the spongy resistance of a weed. It feels alive. Think of it as picking up a wet sock off the bottom. It's heavy, but it has a different kind of weight. This is a fish that has simply sucked in the bait and is sitting there, or slowly swimming off with it. It's subtle, but it is distinctly different from a snag. Then there's the one that fools almost everybody at some point, the slackline bite. This is the ultimate Jedi mind trick a fish can play on you. You're working your lure, feeling the bottom, maintaining tension in your line, and then, nothing. Your line just goes completely limp. Your first instinct is to think your lure got snagged and the line broke, or maybe you're just imagining things. But what actually happened is, a fish grabbed your lure and is swimming directly towards you, faster than you are retrieving. It has created slack in the line. This is a bite you will never, ever feel in your rod tip. You can only see it. You have to be a line watcher. If you see your line suddenly go slack or start moving sideways, reel up the slack as fast as you can and set the hook. This is a 100% guaranteed fish. So, how do you get better at this? You have to actively practice. I want you to try the no hook set drill. Go to a spot you know has a varied bottom, some rocks, some sand, some weeds. Tie on a lure, maybe a Texas-rigged worm or a jig. And for the next 30 minutes, your only job is to cast and feel. That's it. You are forbidden from setting the hook. When you feel a thump, a tick, a scrape, or a mushy feeling, don't react. Just pause and analyze it. Say out loud, "Okay, that was a sharp tap. Probably a rock." Or, that feels spongy and it's getting heavier. That's a weed." By taking away the impulse to set the hook, you force your brain to actually process the information coming up the line. You are consciously building a sensory library of what the bottom feels like, which makes the actual bite stand out dramatically when it happens. Let's talk about your equipment, specifically your line. Braided line can be your best friend and your worst enemy in this situation. Because braid has virtually zero stretch, It's like a high-definition television for your sense of touch. You feel absolutely everything. Every pebble, every blade of grass, every subtle change in bottom composition. This is fantastic for detecting those light, subtle bites. However, it also magnifies all the false signals. That tiny rock now feels like a boulder. That little stick feels like a log. If you're not mentally prepared for that flood of information, braid can actually make the problem worse. It can make you jumpy and cause you to set the hook on everything. It's a powerful tool, but you have to learn to filter out the noise and focus only on the signals that mean fish. Your fishing rod is not just a tool for casting. It's a musical instrument, and you need to learn how to play it. A high-quality, sensitive graphite rod acts as an antenna. It's designed to transmit vibrations from the line, through the guides, and directly into your hand. If you're using an old fiberglass rod that feels like a pool cue, you're fishing with earplugs in. You won't feel anything but the most aggressive, violent strikes. A sensitive rod, especially one with a fast or extra-fast action, allows you to feel the subtle details. You can tell the difference between sand and mud, gravel, and bigger rocks. Investing in a quality rod is one of the fastest ways to shorten the learning curve. It gives your brain the high-fidelity information it needs to make the right call. We need to address the myth of the hard hook set. We see it on television all the time. The pro angler setting the hook so hard they practically fly out of the boat. This creates the impression that you need to react with lightning speed and incredible force. But a lot of the time, this violent reaction is a panic response to a suspected snag, not a calculated response to a confirmed bite. When you feel something, your first move shouldn't be a massive boat-rocking hook set. It should be to simply reel down, take up any slack, and pull. This is called a reel set, or applying steady pressure. This simple move will tell you everything you need to know. If it's a rock, it won't move. If it's a fish, you'll feel it pull back, and then you can drive the hook home. A powerful mental tool is to visualize what the fish is actually doing down there. A fish doesn't typically run into your lure like it's a car crash. For many species, especially bass, the bite is an act of inhalation. The fish flares its gills and creates a vacuum, sucking your lure into its mouth. This action is what creates the thump or tick that you feel. It's a quick, sharp pulse of pressure. Other times, a fish might just grab the tail of your lure and start to swim away with it. This creates a feeling of weight or movement. By visualizing these different scenarios, you can better match the feeling in your hands to what might actually be happening underwater. It helps you move past the simple binary question of, is that a bite? And start asking, what kind of bite was that? I mentioned this with the slackline bite, but it applies to everything. You need to become a line watcher. Your sense of feel is important, but it's only one of your tools. Your eyes are just as crucial. As you retrieve your lure, keep your eyes glued to the point where your fishing line enters the water. Before you feel anything, you will often see it. You might see a tiny twitch in the line. You might see the line suddenly start moving to the left or right. You might see it jump. These are all undeniable signs that something alive has your lure. Your eyes can confirm what your hands are unsure about. Many pro anglers will tell you that they see more bites than they feel, especially when the fishing is tough and the bites are subtle. Don't fish blindfolded. Let's debunk a common term you hear, the pressure bite. Some anglers use this to describe what was, in all likelihood, just them getting snagged. They'll say, I had a pressure bite, but he dropped it. Let's be clear. A fish creates a very specific kind of pressure. It's a living pressure. It can throb, it can shake its head, it can change direction. A rock or a log creates dead pressure. It's static. It doesn't fight back. You can pull on a snag all day, and the pressure will just increase until something breaks. If you pull on a fish, it will almost always pull back. So, stop calling snags pressure bites. By giving it a different name, You are just reinforcing the bad habit of misinterpreting the signal. Call it what it is, a snag. Then you can learn from it and move on. One of the biggest culprits in this whole affair is monotony. Picture this. You've been standing on the same bank, casting to the same spot, using the same lure with the same retrieve for 2 hours straight. Your brain goes into autopilot. You're just going through the motions. This is the danger zone. When you are on autopilot, you are not actively processing the information coming up your line. Your brain is half asleep. This is when you are most vulnerable to misinterpreting signals and reacting purely on instinct, which is usually wrong. The solution is simple. Break the pattern. If you haven't had a bite in 20 minutes, change something. Change your lure. Change your retrieve speed. Move 10 feet down the bank. This forces your brain to wake up and pay attention again. It keeps you engaged and focused. Let's walk through a real-life scenario to put it all together. Imagine you're fishing a Carolina rig, slowly dragging that weight across a gravel bed. Your rod tip is transmitting a constant rhythmic series of vibrations. Tick, 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 scrape, tick. It's predictable. You know exactly what it is. You're feeling the bottom. Then, in the middle of that pattern, you feel a single sharp thump. It's completely different from the gravel. It's an interruption in the pattern. That is your bite. The key takeaway here is that a real bite is an anomaly. It is the thing that doesn't fit the pattern. You have to learn the pattern of the bottom before you can recognize the interruption. The gravel is the noise. The fish is the signal. Here is another common scenario. You're casting a spinnerbait or a swim jig along a weed edge. As you retrieve, you feel your lure bumping into the weeds. It's that familiar, mushy, spongy feeling. You learn to gently pull it through. You feel it load up, then pop free. Load up, pop free. You're in a rhythm. Then on one of those pulls, right as the lure pops free from the weeds, your line suddenly gets heavy and starts moving sideways. That's the fish. It was using the weed edge as an ambush point. It saw your lure emerge and attacked it. This is a classic reaction strike. You didn't feel a thump. You felt a change in weight and direction immediately following an action. This shows how bites are often tied to what your lure is doing and where it is. Ultimately, all of this leads to one thing: confidence. When you truly know the difference between a rock and a fish, you fish with a completely different mindset. You are no longer second-guessing every little bump and tick. You're not jumpy. You're not wasting energy on false alarms. You are fishing with a calm, focused intention. This confidence allows you to be more patient. It leads to better, more timely hook sets because you are reacting to a confirmed signal, not a hopeful guess. This relaxed state of mind makes you a better fisherman, and it makes the entire experience far more enjoyable. You're no longer at war with the bottom of the lake. You're in a conversation with it, waiting for a fish to interrupt. This brings us to the danger of what I call hopeful fishing. This is when you're just casting and retrieving with your fingers crossed, hoping a fish will hook itself. This mindset makes you a passive angler. You are waiting for something to happen to you. It also makes you jumpy. You're so desperate for a bite that you'll set the hook on a shadow, a floating leaf, or a stiff breeze. The alternative is intentional fishing. This is when you expect to get a bite on every cast. You are actively searching for the signal. You know what the bottom feels like. You know what your lure is doing. And you know exactly what a bite is going to feel like when it happens. You are an active participant. Shifting from a hopeful mindset to an intentional one is the final step in this journey. So, what if you're still not sure? You feel something that could be a bite, but it could also be a snag. Here is the final, ultimate test. This is the tiebreaker. Do not swing for the fences. Do not perform a massive wild hook set. Simply reel down to take up any slack in your line, and then perform a steady, smooth pullback with your rod. Think of it as just leaning into it. This simple action will tell you everything. A rock will not move. A log will feel like dead, heavy weight. But a fish will almost always react. It will pull back. You will feel that unmistakable living weight and the throb of a head shake. The moment you feel the fish pull back, that is when you drive the hook home with a sharp, powerful motion. This one technique will save you countless snags. So, let's bring it all home. This was never just about feeling a bite. It's been about unlearning how to feel a snag. Your brain, in its well-intentioned effort to find a fish for you, has been highlighting all the wrong signals for years. The key is to stop fishing with blind hope and start fishing with intention and analysis. The biggest aha moment in all of this is when you realize that a real bite is an anomaly. It's a break in the pattern of the bottom. The rock, the gravel, the mud, that's the pattern. The fish is the interruption. Once you start listening for the interruption, instead of just reacting to any old bump, the entire game changes for you. This will save you lures, it will save you frustration, and it will absolutely, 100%, increase your hookup ratio. You'll stop fighting the lake and start fighting the fish. Thank you so much for watching. If this helped you realize you've been battling a few too many rocks, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more no-nonsense fishing advice. Now I want to know, what's the one feeling you always mistake for a bite? Is it a lightweed, a log, or a particular type of rock? Let's talk about it in the comments below.